let's go. Join, let's go. Yeah. We built it. We grind it. That's right, man. We ride it. We cruising. We built it. We grind it. That's right. Let's go. We ride it. We cruising. We built it. We grind it.
My name's Dru Jacobs. I'm Fubu for Prez on pretty much all of my social medias. I'm from Nixa, Missouri. I lived in Orlando for quite a few years. I actually learned how to drift out there with one of my buddy Chris's. Yeah, I've always been into cars. That's been my big hobby since I was a kid, always just saving up to make it happen. I think whenever I was a kid, the first movie my parents took me to see was Fast and the Furious. So I was one of those guys. Yeah, just your average guy outside of that. I grew up being a downhill longboarder, and I've come to realize if you were a skateboarder, a longboarder, whatever it may be, we've all got some sort of motorcycle build or car build. And I kind of went on the extreme routes. So I have a S52 Dinan M3. It's an E36 that I've been working on for the last year. And then I have a 135i, and then in the garage, I have a 635 CSI from 89.
So before we go to those,
Okay,
let's go back a little bit in time to whenever you were watching a movie and like that stuff. What was your first vehicle that you got?
so the first vehicle I got, my very first car was a Dodge Neon that someone abandoned at my parents' house. And somehow I got the car. I treated it like it was Paul Walker's GTR in Fast and the Furious. There was a road called Old Scenic, and me and the boys would tear it up every weekend. And then I finally saved up enough money, and I got a 300ZX. And we did the same thing, but being a college kid on a pretty tight budget, an old 90s sports car wasn't really what I needed. So I sold it to go to college, and really never owned a car until I got into BMWs after a car accident. And yeah, after that, I just really went to town. I started going to autocross events. I've been to high performance driver educations. That way I can get my NASA license for time trials.
Is this what you did back in college, like to learn a lot of this stuff?
No, I just started this now. So in college, I wasn't able to do a lot. I went to college to be a chemist, and that didn't pan out. So I dropped out, I want to say after maybe a semester, or maybe it was more than that. It's been 10, 15 years. And yeah, I just kind of went on and started working in sales, and I've done sales ever since.
And then the car world too has just been your big fascination with everything.
Yeah.
And a lot of stuff, did you learn from the streets? Did you learn it from somebody? Learn it from online?
So yeah, honestly, most of it YouTube. When it kind of goes back to longboarding, every time I wanted to learn a trick, I was from the middle of nowhere. So I went onto YouTube and I'd learn how to ollie or how to do a slide or whatever it was. And that's kind of how I learned how to do all of the drifting. I was terrible. I'm not going to say I was great. It was just a lot of fun to go around and mess around with it. And then once I got over the phase of sliding my cars around, I actually got focused on building a track car, which I'm in the middle of doing. I was heavily inspired by the 90s, like the first Fast and the Furious movie, and Tokyo Drift as well. But I also like to be period correct. So that's kind of been a difficult point. It's nice though, with the 90s BMWs, they are so boxy. There's really not a whole lot you have to do. You can throw on fat tires, they look good. You can lower them, and you can even keep the stock wheels in some cases, and they'll look just fine.
Before we go to all that though,
yeah.
Just for the people that don't know what longboarding is.
Oh, okay.
Tell me about longboarding and the life that you lived of longboarding, and do you still currently do it now?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. So whenever I was a teenager, longboarding was everything to me. Like, it's kind of the way I see cars now. I would wake up at 5 a.m. and I would go practice before school started, and then I would do it after school. It was probably one of the most formative hobbies of my life. if you're not familiar with longboarding, so you'll come up to the biggest hill you can find pretty much, and you'll just go down the biggest hill. We had a couple like mini haha in between Nixa and Ozark that supposedly we were hitting 50 miles per hour. Just things like that. I actually have a buddy named Chase Hiller from, I believe he went to high school in Ozark, who is actually one of the fastest in the world, if I remember correctly. He's definitely the fastest that I know. I'll say that for sure. I'd look up some of his videos. You'll get a really good picture of what longboarding really is at the professional level, because what I was doing, it was fun, but we definitely weren't going 75 miles per hour skating down mountains. It'd be like a minute run or something like that. But it was really fun. I ended up getting out of it because I had this shoulder replaced when I was 18 years old. I've cracked this kneecap, and then I've been in a coma as well as a result of skateboarding and longboarding. So I decided that maybe having a cage around me would work like bubble wrap and keep me out of a little bit of injuries maybe.
Do you have any advice for anybody that would be wanting to learn longboarding or trying it out so they can help protect themselves from what you went through?
Oh yeah. Really the most important advice I have when it comes to longboarding, at least for keeping yourself safe, it comes to two things. Wear safety gear and learn how to fall. With those two things, you'll be able to keep yourself out of a lot of injuries and you'll be able to slide away. It's still going to be hard on you, but it's really one of the most freeing sports you can have when you're young. Like, I don't want it to ever be painted in a negative way, because it reminds me of the way that the movie Easy Rider kind of explains riding a motorcycle. Like, you just go out, you're free, you have the wind blowing in your hair. You can go slow or you can go fast. It just depends on what you as a person want to do. But it just ties in with skateboarding. Everything I could say about longboarding, I'm sure someone said about it already.
And last one, you said you have some sites they can go check out. Any friends that you want to toss up on the YouTube channels?
Yeah, so I have an affiliate link with K2 Industries, which I'm sure I can give him and have him upload. K2 Industries, they make a lot of E36. I also have this 135i, which I don't know if I'll be modifying this more. It's already at 450 horsepower, and it's kind of enough for a daily. But if you need your boost gauges, body kits, whatever it is, K2 Industries got them, and they're honestly a killer price.
After college, you said you kind of went to Orlando or something like that?
Yeah, so I moved out to Orlando, and I had some friends in the car scene. I got really big into taking car pictures. I was terrible, but I enjoyed it, and I got to see some cool cars, like a Connoisseur GTP, which most people have never heard of. Mossler ended up buying out the company, and I believe Mossler might have been bought out, but don't quote me on that one. But it's like a 16 to 1,800 pound car, super lightweight, and it reminded me of a supercar version of a Miata. It had the Cosworth motor in it, so it was pretty quick. And then you'd see some like Spoon Honda Civics imported from Japan, the 240s imported. It was a really fun time. I got lucky and I made some friends. They kind of taught me how to drift a little bit. They primarily did most of the drifting, but there was a couple times I got to go flip it out or slide them out. Yeah, and then I moved out here in it's been about 3 years. After I moved out here, I didn't really have a car. I kind of got back on my feet, got used to living back in Missouri and not in Florida. A couple years went by and I bought an RX-8, which is my first car getting into sports cars.
So how did you feel about the Florida vibe compared to here in the Ozarks of the drift world and the car scene?
So in the Ozarks, there's not really a car scene. It's very small. Highway racing, I feel like, is probably the biggest thing, or drag racing, versus out in Florida, we just mob down wherever we were at. Like, there was FedEx parking lots that they'd have people just drifting at. The highways, everyone drives fast in Florida. Like, if you're not going fast in Florida, you're falling behind everyone else, is the way it was explained to me. So it doesn't matter if you're working, you're driving, you're always going. And I loved it, to be honest. You saw some really nice foreign cars. You saw people going fast. You got to ride in them. I remember I saw the first Pandem Supra. I don't know if it just been released or how long it'd been out. I didn't even know it was a thing. And this neon Panam Supra, and then there was a baby blue Porsche 911 GT3 RS, and that was followed by a Ferrari. And my little Midwest brain was just like, whoa, like this is the real world. People can do this. And it kind of pushed me a little harder to kind of get something unique, but it took me years to decide what I wanted to do with the car. I'd had a 300ZX and I'd had a Miata. They were cool, but they're not that cool. Like, in my opinion, I love the 300ZX. It's got a lot of pedigree. So does the Miata, but I'm 6'5". Sitting in a Miata to me is, I feel like I'm shoved into, like I'm Mr. Incredible in a cubicle. It just doesn't work. So I got into Mazdas after that, because Mazda makes a great car. The Miata was just too small. I got into an RX-8, and man, that car, the rotaries, if you've never been in a rotary, there's nothing like it. It may not be the most powerful or the fastest, but having the 9,000 RPMs and like just the way it sings, you don't have to worry about downshifting all too often or upshifting. Like, it's very wide. It's an easy car to learn on. If you want to autocross, it's a great practice. I would say though, reliability kind of sucks. Like, you got to make sure you're putting that premix in. But that's not a big deal. Once you get used to it, you just get these little like chemical guide bottles that are pre-made for it, and it tells you exactly how much to put in per gallon of gas, so that becomes easy. But there's just something about them. They handle like a go-kart, similar to a Miata, but they have the power to back it up. If it's your first sports car, you want to get into drifting, you want to get into maybe making a stance car, you want to race cars door to door, or you want to go out and do time trial, it's a great entry point. They're reliable enough and they're safe enough. They're actually safer than that BMW and every BMW I've ever wrecked, to be honest, which I've never wrecked a BMW that was made after 2004. So that's a good thing.
Would you say that you've learned a lot more in Florida of working on cars and driving them than coming back here and learning?
Not really. So like, me and my friends would work on them and like things like that, but not having my own, I didn't have a reason to be constantly working on it. So like, my RX-8, it was my first sports car I'd had in years, and like I'd been in a really bad accident previously, so I'd had to learn how to use my hands again. So that was like the car I wanted to use to teach myself how to drive again. But in the process, trying to drift it in the snow, I've destroyed the subframe, so that had to get fixed. I don't know, hit animals, which is unfortunate, but it's part of living in the Midwest. Possums, things like that run in front of you and you don't have anywhere else to go. And you know, old cars, things break. So I'd say more so my best friend Wayne, and then just some of the people I've met on Facebook Marketplace have done the most. I do have a amazing mechanic out here though. His name is Dylan over at European Performance Specialist. He's done everything I've needed done to that car. I took it to the BMW dealership in Springfield, or I didn't take this car to the BMW. I had an E36 M3, and it was a 100,000 mile car, so I wanted everything refreshed. Got everything refreshed, got the car back. It drove the same as it did. The transmission fluids hadn't been changed like they needed to be. I take it to Dylan, and he fixes it all. Significantly lower price, but he actually fixed it, which is the important part. So I would recommend him to anyone that has a European car, whether it's a 90s, 80s BMW, you've got an 80s Volkswagen Golf, or you have a Ferrari. Like, as long as you've got something a little bit specialized, he'll do an amazing job with it.
So let's go back to the RX-8. Tell me a little bit more about that. That's when you came back from Florida. That's what you had?
No. So I actually bought that. It was a couple years after I'd moved back from Florida. I just wanted a red sports car. I went down for a 240 SX that had an RB in it, but it was a piece of junk, as is normal whenever you go to look at 240s. But I drove home with that, and it was honestly one of the most reliable cars that I've ever had. I drove the wheels off of it constantly. It's not a fast car, but I could have swore I was Mario Andretti when I was driving it. No matter where I went, it was redlined every time. And unfortunately, I did end up wrecking it, as a lot of us do in some of our silly times. But, you know, it was a good learning experience, and it's a really safe car. So there wasn't really much more I could ask for. I used it to better my skills. So inevitably, when you push yourself, you are going to end up making a mistake. It just happened. That was the last time I made a mistake, and it wasn't on the road, or it wasn't on the track. I'm sorry. So that was a good learning point for me. I should have learned it previously. But after that, I got like a Buick LeSabre because I really wanted to dig in the burn of not having a sports car for a little bit. I drove that and then just kind of bounced around with dailies. And then I got into a 2004 323i, and it was my first drift car that was mine, and like purposely built. And it was my first BMW. My buddy who got me into BMWs probably would have made fun of me because it was kind of a piece. It had like all kinds of profanity written all over it. Whatever you could imagine a teenager riding in a bathroom stall, someone had scratched on it. I got off work and I'd taken an Uber to Kansas City to pick it up because the kid told me he'd sell it to me for $1,500 if I came that day. And I was like, oh man, that's cheap enough. That justifies a $500 Uber since I don't have a friend to go with me. I made it all the way home, had the car for a couple weeks, and then I hit a armadillo, which is really weird because it was in the middle of Springfield, and I have never seen an armadillo in the middle of Springfield before in my life, so I don't know what it was doing there, but it caused my coilover to separate while I was driving, and it really royally destroyed the bottom end of that car. The oil pan was roasted, and I sat there and I was thinking about getting rid of it, but instead I put it on Facebook Marketplace for $2,000 and someone came and swapped it up. So it ended up working out. I got a couple more 323i's that I drift around, but they're not fun to work on, and they're not fun enough cars for me to really want to work on it constantly. So eventually I got into M3s. I got a E36 M3, and that was my first, I'd say, real sports car. And that was fun. It was a convertible, but man, having a 6-speed M3 was amazing. And like having a car with that much pedigree, to me, like, I grew up as a poor kid and I never thought I could have these cars. And now I'm driving the car to work every day that my neighbor I wanted to be like got to drive every day. And that was honestly very satisfying. I know it's a little materialist, but it was nice to feel that. And then I just got tired of it. Every E46 I've had has had ridiculous electrical problems, which that's whenever I throw the rag in. I'm not going to keep chasing a problem that keeps appearing every time I replace a fuse, a wire, a bolt, a computer. And that's been the story with every E46. This one was no different, really. So I got rid of it. I actually ended up getting this car because me and my best friend one day were driving home and we were going too fast and he lost control. We ended up flipping the car a bunch of times and the car exploded. It was a green convertible E36. I don't remember the exact engine code, but it flipped a couple times and I woke up and we were on fire. So, you know, you scream, stop, drop, and roll. You get out, you know, you help your friend out. You do what you need to do. Fortunately, I survived. I spent a month in a coma, and then I had to relearn how to walk and just some basic stuff like that. Use my hands because I had skin grafts. I believe they said it was 70% of my body, 80, like 70 something percent. It was ridiculous. I don't remember. I had more things to worry about than an exact number of burns. I almost lost my face, my ears. Luckily, stem cells, man, they work. Matt Reeves was onto something. Let's go, Superman. But I eventually recovered, and that's when I got the RX-8. just because I wanted to prove to myself, I guess, I was better than a car. And then I got this, and this car I really wanted to prove I was better than. So I've taken it to that road so many times, and I don't know, I guess I got my answer. I'm better than the car. But it was completely stock at 180 something thousand miles. I've now got it pretty close to 200,000. I've owned it for a year. It's not so stock anymore. It's a pretty mild build, I'd say. I haven't opened up the motor. I'm waiting till this spring to start up. So we've got a couple weeks until that happens. But it's a 1999 E36 Dinan Stage 4 M3. So it really doesn't mean anything unless you really like BMWs. I'll be honest. I have like an extra 30 or 40 horsepower, but BMW guys go crazy over it. As an unbiased opinion, it doesn't. The high flow throttle body, you can get it from Porsche. It's lower cost. It does the same thing. That aside though, the driving experience from this car is amazing. Like, you are so connected to the road at every moment. Even before I had the coilovers, I remember getting in it after driving my E46, and it felt like I was driving in a video game when I was in the E46, because there were so many computers and the road feel just wasn't the same. It was more of a luxury sports car. And I've always said this is BMW's last sports car that happens to be a luxury car. After that, they kind of focus more on the luxury. They're still amazing cars. This just kind of skips out on some of those creature comforts, but it has the full dove gray, I forget what they call the wheels, the Vader seats that everyone loves. I've started taking them out because I'm putting a full roll cage in the car. Now that I am doing time trial, I just have the bucket seat in now because I've been lazy and haven't installed it. Other than that, I've installed a 355 millimeter big brake kit, which gives me, I believe it's 8 millimeters of clearance between the face of my wheel and the brake, which I'll more than likely resolve that issue by going to 18s. But I do love how it just fills up the face of the wheel, and it stops on a dime. When it does come to the EBC, something that I would highly recommend, their brake pads, I don't like them very much. I'll just be honest. They take a little bit too much to warm up, or too long to warm up. And I've just heard from most of my friends that do go to the track, or most of my track groups, that they do tend to be a bit unsafe on long sessions and things like that. I never had any issues with them, and I haven't yet. So I would recommend them if you're on a budget and you're not doing a hardcore track build. If you're doing autocross, they'll be great. Even on small track days, I haven't had issues. But if you want to do door-to-door endurance stuff, I would probably upgrade them with just your Brembo pads or whatever you normally would go with. Other than that, they've been amazing. The Apex wheels on there, everyone knows Apex. I was going to go with BBS's, but the Apexes are lighter, and I wanted to stay naturally aspirated on this car just because I have a turbocharged car that makes more horsepower than I need. 450 is plenty to drive every day, and it's probably the most that you can use at the track with a rear-wheel drive car that's as light as these are. Honestly, the car does the work. It goes where I tell it to. It doesn't spin out. It's got the Indy Firehawks, which I love. They keep you from jumping up a class whenever you're in autocross and you're doing your NASA stuff. So that's pretty A1. They have the 200 treadwear. That with the big brake kit, the KWs, it stops on a dime. It only has, I think it's like 280 horsepower, 290, something like that. Something ridiculous. It's low. And it's fun. It'll keep up in the corners. If you're in a Porsche, you're in a newer BMW, you're in anything that's got a little bit of gut to it, you're going to pull away from me in the straights, but that's okay. I love it. I grew up back road racing, and I never thought I'd have a turbocharged car until I got this guy, and this guy is now getting turbocharged because of it. The 550 realm is really where I'd like it to sit, but with it being a track car, as we all know, it's probably not going to be usable at that point. So realistically, I'm tuning it for about 450, but that's what could happen. And we all, as every car guy knows, what I say is supposed to happen starting this spring is probably going to get pushed off till who knows how long. That's just the reality of it. And especially having 3 BMW projects, one of them always gets pushed back and then I forget about it. And then 3 months later comes along and I have 5 more problems I have to deal with the same car because I waited to fix it. But it's fun. It's a constant game of guess.
So we'll go to the one, the black one or the turbo one.
Mm-hmm.
What led you to the turbo over there?
Yeah, so that one's kind of funny. I have the cars I love to drive. I'm rebuilding my friend that passed away. He has a 635 CSI. I've got that for whenever I want to set track times or do autocross or hit corners. But my fiance, she's a new driver. She's from Vietnam. I love her very, very much. Very, very much. And she decided to play chicken with my chicken with a power pole and a Mercedes I'd found. It was a mint Mercedes. I loved it. I spent a long time finding this car. But yeah, she did that. Luckily, she was okay. The power pole ended up falling on the car. So it took him like 2 hours to turn the power off and for her to get out of the car. I'd say she more than learned from her mistakes. And I'm glad she was okay. I just laugh about it because I'm glad she was okay. And it was her first accident 6 months after she's got her license at 24. It was funny because you could tell she didn't know what she was doing whenever she went off the road. So I spent a couple weeks looking for cars and I told myself I'm not getting another BMW. Every BMW I've got but my E36 has been kind of a pile of junk at the end of the day. Like, I love the car more than anything, but they're always breaking down. They'll be leaking fluids. They'll have electrical issues. The motors randomly blow up. Not really that random. Usually the people you buy them from don't take care of them. But this one, perfect preventative maintenance. So I kind of had a false sense of hope with this one because it reminds me a lot of the E36 and the way it drives. It's got heavy steering, things like that. So I went to go test drive it. No intentions of buying it. I was just going to go kick the guy's tires, do some donuts or something, you know. First time I talked myself into trying that. And he started it up. He told me about the maintenance history, showed me all the receipts, and I realized that I'm buying this car at probably one of the best deals I could ever buy. I went to check it out, and I was looking at another one of these. It also was an 08 manual, but it didn't have a tune. It had about 200,000 miles because I wanted to daily it, and I don't mind messing with the N54s. But this one had lower mileage. It was about half the price. It's tuned on MHD tunes. It's making about 450 horsepower, 2 T18 turbos. You know, it's got your stereotypical aftermarket downpipe exhaust. Well, it's straight piped. I like straight pipes, to be honest. So that was a big selling point for me. And it's got the black exterior with the red interior and just kind of some red accents. Honestly, if I'm honest, I just bought it because I thought it would look good next to this car. And I didn't have the heart to tell my fiance that. So I spent the 3 hours back driving from picking this car up, coming up with reasons why it was a good purchase. But at the end of the day, I just thought it would look good next to my M3. I'm not going to give you the runabout answer that she got. So let's come check out the engine bay. This is one of my favorite parts of this car. So this is the first car I got that was this old and actually halfway nice. So you can actually see what all of the parts are. I do have the Dinan cold air intake, high flow, throttle body, all of that fun stuff. It's part of the Stage 4 tune. I do have the Bimmer World boot because everything does fail. The big things are I have the Dinan tune and computer on here. And then this is my personal favorite part of this entire build. So here you're able to adjust the brake pressure or the brake balance. It's really helpful for whenever I'm trying to set lap times, things like that. I wish I could set it as I'm driving, but you know, it's a 90s car. I'm pretty happy with it. And then it also is manual brakes. So that makes braking significantly easier for me. I don't have to worry about measuring the distance my my foot is traveling. All I have to do is memorize how much pressure I'm putting on and how hard it is. I don't know why, but that's easier for me. It also makes it easier for me to downshift because I have massive feet. And if you're not familiar with BMWs, they tend to have a small pedal area. I might just be biased because I have big feet. I got called a clown in high school, maybe for other reasons, who knows. And then here we have the Vorschlag camber plates. I'm very fond of them. They're nice. They get the job done. There's not much you can say about camber plates besides they hold my camber where it should be. And then under that, I have the KW coilovers. I think I went with the V2s. I might have went with the V3s because I was debating on it with my mechanic. He said I should go with the V2s, but I figured it's not that much more. I'll have to check the box, but let's say V2 for his sake. I usually go with what he says because he's good at what he does. And then I have the EBC big brake kit. So it's pretty close to the wheel well. And you can see here the calipers are just barely smudging through. I honestly would say I did that for track purposes, but I wanted big brakes on Apex wheels because it reminds me of the 90s Need for Speed cars and, you know, Fast and Furious cars where the brakes are just massive. I left the rear brakes completely stock. It is on coilovers as well. But I figured I'd just put new brakes there. Most of your braking comes from the front. I haven't had any issues, and I don't think I use the full 350 millimeters. And then this car did come with the stock boots. And then I have the renowned steering wheel, which is my favorite part of the car. As of right now, I have the stock interior inside of it just because my fiance likes to go for rides in this, and she truly loves this car. It has the stock Vaders in it, which people really like. I just have them in here because my fiance thinks bucket seats are uncomfortable and I haven't put the roll bar in. I think it's not safe to have the seat as I have it now. Just to be honest, don't do it. This is just a short-term thing because I'd taken my seat out and I don't feel like messing with it during the winter when the car's not being driven. So within the next couple weeks, we'll get the roll bar in, and then this will become a bucket seat, unfortunately for her. So if you need any Vaders, let me know. I'll have them up for sale. Pretty much the entire stock interior is going up for sale. So if you need door cards or whatever, hit me up on Instagram. But yeah, eventually the goal is for this to look like a full track car and for it to be a full track car. I don't drive it, but on the weekends. So I have no reason for it to be anything else anymore. It did 200,000 miles as a weekend driver and as fun. But once the headliner starts sagging, it's time to pull it out. Once the doors start or the seats start wrinkling, time to put the buckets in. So we're at the point of no return, I would say. And then I also bought a turbocharger from a Dodge Ram that my roommate has, and we're going to build a turbo kit for this car. Everyone knows the route we're taking. Louis Vaughn, I believe is his name, on Street Alpha Podcast did a video that explains the whole process he took, so I won't waste your time here explaining all the parts, but we'll be pushing about 550 horsepower following what he's doing with the spa manifold and all that fun stuff. Again, we're starting at 550 because my roommate had the turbo laying around. It's in good condition. Once that realistically becomes too much power, the goal will be to buy a new turbo and to be pushing 400 to 450 horsepower. I really don't think more than that is useful on the track, just for what I believe in. I will be adding aero, but that's nothing exciting. Everyone goes with the same aero on these cars. So 9 Lives Racing spoiler. We'll go with a nice metal front diffuser, a carbon fiber front diffuser from Veris, I believe they're called. I ordered it and it got lost in FedEx. So I hope it shows up in the next 2 months, but it was supposed to show up 4 months ago. I think I might have taken an L on there. But that's what happens when you don't pay for shipping insurance. I learned that those are the most important $9 of your life. Other than that, we've got the stock shifting knob, everything. I like to keep it as stock as possible. I wasn't planning on modifying this car at all, but I got a big boy job, and once that happened, I didn't know what to do with myself, and I spent all my money on this car. And
The steering wheel.
oh yeah, the steering wheel. This is a renowned steering wheel. This is probably, when I bought this car, it was the same story as the black turbocharged car, the 135i. I had my E36. I told myself I wasn't going to buy this car. It's probably going to be a piece of junk. And like, I was ready to be out of BMWs. Actually, exact same story across both cars. I show up to test drive it, and my buddy's the one who's selling the car. Probably should have paid attention. But then I got excited, catch up with an old high school friend's little brother. And then we went and took it for a test drive. It was amazingly smooth, and it came with this Alcantara steering wheel, which over the years has become laid smooth. I've ordered a replacement. It sits in my garage, but this car, the guy who bought the car put this on whenever he got the Dinan tune. So I want to say the car was a year old whenever it got all the stuff done. And I don't know, it kind of just feels like it'd be wrong to take it off.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Plus, it's got a horn, and I've never seen none of my friends have a horn on their aftermarket steering wheels. And to me, I like being the one that's different.
All right, let's move over to the turbo.
This is my 135i. This one, I got really fortunate. The guy I bought it from a kid, as what happens. That's why if you look here, there are these ugly, ugly emblems. If you're a BMW guy, never buy these. If your car is black or red, they make it look cheap. But I got fortunate. A gentleman from the Netherlands purchased it. He spent the first 15 to 25 years of his life there learning how to work on cars. And he moved here, and basically he would just buy these from Copart, and he built the strongest one he could. It, within the last 10,000 miles, has had rod bearings, vanos, your head gasket, oil pan, new water pump, new high pressure fuel pump, spark plugs, ignition coils, turbos. The turbos are now two T18s, and then it's got the VSRF. I honestly start getting mixed up whenever I start talking about both cars on what's got what in it. If it wasn't for notebooks, your boy would be lost on his parts, and his tuner probably would have blown up his car on accident. But fortunately, I have notebooks to tell me everything. You can't really see the turbos because they're put in some wacky spots, but at the end of the day, you can hear them, and that's really what matters. We have the aftermarket wastegate, so I'm fortunate I don't deal with that notorious N54 rattle.
So yeah, if you want to start them up,
yeah.
So while we're here.
Yeah. So this one, it's just your black and red interior. Like I said, the guy I bought it from got it from a kid, And he and I are of the similar beliefs of maintenance is the most important thing. So I just got a check engine light on for it running lean. It's because of the tune. So, you know, emailed MHD. We're getting that resolved. And then I went ahead and got new coil packs. But guys like us tend not to care about things like sagging headliners or just terrible Alcantara jobs in our car. So it looks nice from maybe a first, second glimpse, but none of it was installed correctly. Not a big deal. At the end of the day, I just like to drive the car. It's pushing roughly, I think the exact numbers are 448 horsepower and 460 something pounds of torque, which isn't too much, but it's pretty close to the max of what these things should be doing stock. Fortunately, the gentleman I bought it from did reinforce them, so I don't have to worry about doing that. But I'll tune it down still just because I do daily it. I don't want to be dealing with check engine lights left and right. Basic things like that. It's nice. It has this thing, which I thought I would hate, but I can literally watch a movie while driving. I don't do that because that's dangerous. But like if my fiance is driving with me or right, she's in the passenger seat, she can watch Grey's Anatomy or whatever she watches.
It's definitely good for GPS.
Yeah.
So you can see where you're going.
Yeah, don't get lost. It also works whenever I have the mobile link up. I'm not going to set the time to set it up.
Yeah.
But Roads by Porsche works on here. And a lot of your road apps that keep your segment times will use this as a more calibrated system. And it's also calibrated to my actual computer. So it's able to read my RPMs, my speed, things like that. So whenever me and the boys go hard on our back road trips, if you will, we know our exact times, who set the fastest time on each section, just little things like that. I love it. It's cheesy. Never thought I'd like a computer. That was the whole reason I bought the E36. But my fiance likes this car more, so I got to stay. Thanks for checking out my rides. Thanks for checking out Desire to Drive, and we'll see you next time. Have a good one.
How come this isn't going?
You got the lids on, Mom.
Oh.